Hi guys, what's up? So, where can you see the best art? Where is the best art available that you can look at? Is it in a museum? Is it in a gallery? I think the best art is in comic books. And I think this is probably the best art that you can see. I think the best gallery that I've seen is like a comic book store, just because of the variety, just because the amount of art that's in there. And the thing about comic book art is it's relevant art. It's all the new art that's coming out. Okay, so I've been to the galleries, I've seen the art, it's nice. The fine art in the galleries, the paintings are nice. But you go into a gallery and you might find, I don't know, like a handful of nice pieces that you think are nice. The rest of it, there's a lot of like modern art, abstract art, and those are nice. Those are nice art. I just don't think that it really is the same kind of art as like a drawing or a painting of some kind of scene or picture or person. I think it's good. It's nice. I like it, but the best art I think is, besides the fine art, which is, there's some really good stuff. The thing about fine art is that there's not a lot of it, and there's only a few artists that are doing it. And you might find one or two pieces that are new that you haven't seen. But when you go to a comic book store, you find like weekly art. New art comes out every week because comics come out every week. And honestly, like, you might think the inside of the comic book doesn't have great art, but some of them really do have great art. But the front covers are really nice. The only thing is, I wish it wasn't as much genre-based. Like, I really think that the artists that do the covers for comic books should open up and express themselves in a more artistic ways. But I find there's a heavy emphasis on superheroes, and they're constantly just drawing superheroes. Now, the thing is, it's not just superheroes, it's the same superheroes. It's those same superheroes they've been drawing for decades. It's the same thing, the same stories. Like, cool, it's nice to have like an action scene on the front of the comic where there's like, a good guy and a bad guy fighting over some tall building or in a helicopter and like hanging by a ladder and whatever it is, and that's really cool because the scene is cool. Like, the camera angle is cool. You might see it from below, you might see it from above. And it takes a lot of skill to draw that and paint that. But what I like about it is that it comes out every week. There's new art, especially like on the cover of Heavy Metal magazine. They have like seriously the best cover art, I think, of any comic book. And they're a comic book basically. They come out once a month, they have more content, but they're just, they're a comic book. They have comic strips on the inside, but the thing is that, besides just being a comic book, they just have great cover art. And like, there's other stuff that you can find inside a comic book store that you cannot find like in a gallery. The only other place that they have good art is in the art section of the bookshop. There you can see some good art. Now, the thing is that, it's cool to go to a museum and look at art and everything and see the art in the museum. But thing is that that's old art. It's been there for a while. You must have seen it already. It was painted years ago, and it can't be the only relevant art that's still around. What I'm really looking for, what I'm really seeing as art that's relevant is the art that's being drawn right now. The thing on the cover of the comic book is the thing that was drawn 2 weeks ago. It was drawn last week, and now it's in the cover of the comic book and it's publishing. And that's where I think the really good art is. I mean, I've seen galleries. The thing about galleries now, there is just such a heavy emphasis on modern art and abstract art. It's just too much of it. Like, it's decorative and it's interesting, but it's not like the same thing as seeing a person painted or drawn, or like an environment painted or drawn, or animals or fictional things that people made up, drawn and painted, in scenes. It's just not the same thing. It's just it's a painting. And the thing is that, like, yes, some comic books on the inside are not that great, but other comic books on the inside are really, really good. And the thing is, it's not only like the new art, it's also, if you look at the trade paperbacks and some of the other back issues, I mean, and not just like the comic book floppy issues, back issues, but the trade paperbacks, the kind that maybe they were published like 10, 20 years ago, they have great art on the inside. Not all of them do, but some of them really do. If you look at artists like Mobius, and he's one of the better artists, Garth Ennis, there's a lot of really, really good artists that have been doing stuff. Frank Miller did some interesting art, and he did his own style, and that was actually really interesting and stuff like that. There's a lot of good artists who like comic books, and they make content for comic books. And these artists are not just comic books, they make fine art. They make fine art for galleries. You know, like they're the same artists that did a comic book, but then they have a show at a gallery. Like, so you go in the gallery, you might see a few of their pieces, and it's usually like not a lot. For some reason, gallery work is really refined. It's hard to make. It takes a long time, and you don't have a lot of pieces for the gallery. You might have a few. You might have like 4 or 5 or 6 pieces, you know, to put into a gallery that year. But with comics, it's more of like a work job kind of thing, because like when you make a painting, it might sell, it might not sell. You might make money on it, you might make nothing on it, you know? With a comic book, you kind of had to have a deal with a publisher who has experience with this kind of comics selling out a certain amount. So the comic book artists will get paid for their work. So they kind of make a deal with the publisher, with the people making the comic book, that if they draw 20 pages, they get paid this amount of money. You know, whereas if they make their own art, it's subjected to, you know, it's an entrepreneurial thing, it's more of a private business thing, where it's subjected to, is it gonna sell or is it not gonna sell? You can make money on it, you can make nothing on it, you know? But with comic books, they know they're gonna make money, so they feel like that's their job, right? So they spend a lot of time going in there, refining and making art for comics. You know, yes, it's those comics that have to be drawn really quickly. Maybe the art is not as good, but the thing is that that's the new art. It's like art in galleries is not coming out every week. You don't walk into a gallery a week after and see completely different art. You walk into a gallery and see the same art up on the walls for several months before the gallery maybe changes a few of their pieces and rotates them and puts some new stuff in there. Because when someone puts a painting in an art gallery, the art gallery tries to sell it, and it takes sometimes a few months to sell it, or maybe even after a few months it doesn't sell. You know, whereas when you go to a comic book store, the art you see is new, it's fresh, and the only thing about it is it's not always original. Thing is, it's not original because of the characters that are constantly being drawn. Has nothing to do with the artist. This is more of the writers, and this is more of the people buying the comics. You know, if there's a superhero that the writer is making a comic book about, it's because people buy that superhero. They want to keep reading about it, you know? I just thought after a certain while, it just becomes repetitive, and you don't feel like you're really like, these comics are interesting, you know? Like for example, the Conan the Barbarian comics. It's like, it's the same. There's nothing new in those comics. The plot lines are the same. They've been used over and over again. You know, the only thing that is fresh and new and interesting is the art, because the art is not the same. Like, once someone draws something, it's not like they're going to draw the same thing again and again and again. Someone draws something, that's done. They go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They draw all this stuff. So where with comics, sometimes the plots are new and fresh and interesting. Sometimes the plots are things that you've already read, you've already experienced. Like superhero comics, the plots are pretty much the same, you know? I'm not a big fan of superhero comics, so I'm not into it. I'm sure if you get into it enough, it gets really interesting. And I know there's some really relevant superhero comics from the past in trade paperback and everything like that. You know, I'm just not into them. But I feel like the art scene, not the modern, I'm not gonna say modern because modern is abstract, but the current art scene is comic books. Um, well, the subject matter is questionable because it's always, if it's some, hero or some kind of character or whatever, and it's just being drawn over and over and over again, then the subject matter is questionable. It's like, is this really good art if it's just the same thing being drawn over and over and over again, right? The same character. But there's a lot of freshness, there's a lot of newness, and there's a lot of ingenuity, and there's a lot of like new energy in a lot of the fresh art that's happening. Even though there's some art that you've seen before, you've seen that character, maybe flying or like kicking something, or like whatever it is, you also see these interesting arts, these interesting paintings of people that are new characters, or new fictional characters, or characters you haven't heard of before, or maybe a new story that's completely original, that's being drawn. And this is the first time really in kind of history where art is such a storytelling medium, where comic books like sequential art tells a lot more of a story than just one picture. One picture can tell a story, but then sequential art, where it's like pages of pictures and writing, tells its own story, and it tells a whole new story. And this is where artists right now are telling a story. Artists and writers are getting together and collaborating to tell a story. And new art is not as much in the galleries and the museums as it is in the comic book stores. And yes, also in the comic book stores, you'll have like art books with like by certain people, or maybe of a certain character by different people, and then you see like an art book with maybe 50 different pieces or 100 pieces in that art book. And that's kind of amazing, that you can get like an art book with like 50 or 100 pieces of art for like $20, $30, $40 or something like that. Kind of amazing, considering like one piece of art, for one print, you probably won't be able to like pay less than $20 for it. But a whole book of prints, you're only spending maybe 40, and then you're getting like an entire book of all of the prints that artist has made throughout, for that year. So yeah, I think that right now the comic book stores and the comic books are more relevant as art than the museums or the galleries as much. Yes, the museums, have the older stuff, and that's relevant. The galleries have like fine art, and that's totally relevant, but it's not that fresh, weekly new art that you're seeing in the comic book store. It's new art, it's fresh, it's constantly coming out, it's constantly like, they're constantly making another piece and another piece and another piece, and it's just like the continuing art by one artist. You might see like, maybe if one artist is working on one comic book, they'll make a comic, and you'll see that month's art from that artist, and then the next month you'll see the following month's work, and it's pretty much all of the work they've done that month on that comic book. And so you see the continuing work by all of these artists that you can actually follow. Whereas like maybe a fine art artist will bring out, you might only see their stuff in a gallery once a year. They're having newer things, or once every couple of years they have like newer pieces that they're putting up. I mean, you see them online when they paint a piece and they take a photo of it, you see that. But that's just one piece, and it's not like a whole book of art. It's not like the newer stuff. Like every month you'll see more and more art as that artist is working on that one story, and then the cover of the magazine. And it's not just like one artist, it's just hundreds of artists. It's way more art than in a gallery. It's more art than in a museum, just because it's relevant, because it's happening now. This is something people are painting now, drawing now, and it's really, really relevant. And maybe the quality is not as good as in a fine art gallery or whatever, or museum, but the quantity, the way it's coming out, the fact that it's new art, the fact that it is art, and the fact that the artist is really giving their best shot, and the fact that you know, out of all of the selection that you see that week coming out, you always see a few pieces of really, really well done art. So I think, like, right now, the most relevant place to see art is a comic book store, and the most relevant way to consume art. Yes, you can buy prints and put them on your wall. Yeah, absolutely, you know, or of your favorite artists or whatever. No, totally. But the comic book is really, really like, it's the newer art, it's the fresher art, and it's definitely more really, really relevant. Because when I go to a gallery, I might see some pieces, and if I go the following week, I might see pretty much the same stuff. Maybe there's one or two different pieces, and then you'll come back a week later. Maybe you walk down the street and there's a gallery, and you walk in a week later, and it's like still it's the same stuff, but maybe one or two pieces. When you walk into a comic book on a Wednesdays when the comics come out, it's like 100 different new pieces of all different characters and stories and scenes and all different things that the artist imagines. And I feel like the most relevant art right now, like the most original, authentic, relevant art that people try to draw right now, they're inside the comic book store, you know, on the covers and on the insides of comic books, just because the quantity, just because it keeps coming out, new stuff keeps coming out, just because, like, you might not like this kind of stuff, but you might like this other kind of stuff that they have. So let me know what you guys think. Yeah, is the art gallery, you know, is the comic book store like better art than the art gallery? Is it different, you know? Is it better because there's more art, and is it because the art is coming out of the art galleries, of the comic book stores more frequently? Does that make it better than a gallery or a museum? Let me know what you guys think, and like and subscribe to my channel. Yay! And I will see you guys in another video, and just comment below. Let me know what you guys think. All right, take care. See you in another video. Later.